Hello, for those of you joining us, my name is Chris Nickson. Good morning. We're going to start our webinar here on Instanet, which is part of Transaction Desk. And also along with me is Debbie Ran Fajardo. For those of you who don't know Debbie, she's Director of Education and Training for MiRealSource. So should be able to see what's on my screen right now. Debbie, are you seeing my screen right now?
Yes, I sure am.
All right, and you got my big pointer flopping around there. And if you have any questions or anything else like that in your question bar, just go ahead and type in there. I'll periodically try to be looking at them. And Debbie as well will be helping me answer them also. So welcome this morning. I hope you guys all had a good day yesterday. For those of you who celebrated Easter as best you could and found a way to make it work. So with that,
it was definitely an odd Easter, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was an odd Easter. It really was. So we are going to get started here, and we're going to get started with Instanet. Instanet is part of Transaction Desk, and on Transaction Desk you have two parts. Instanet is the first part, and Authentisign is the second part. Authentisign is where we go to sign all the electronic documents that we send out for signature and everything else. There are a couple ways to get to Instanet when you're starting, depending on if you're working with a new listing or if you're going to be writing an offer on the buyer's side. One of the ways to find it is clicking right here where it says resources from your MLS home screen. And over here to your right under online forms, you have Instanet and Authentisign. So you would click on Instanet forms. I'm going to show you the main dashboard first so you can kind of see how Instanet works. And then we'll get into the different ways to access it, whether you're on the buyer side of the transaction or on the listing side. This is your agent dashboard. This is the main screen that comes up when you go into Instanet. Over here on the far left, you have these little buttons or icons. The first one that looks like a speedometer is your dashboard. If you just hover over them for a moment, it'll tell you exactly what they are. This takes you to Transaction Desk where all your transactions are. This takes you to Authentisign where you can do your signings. Of course, you have Instanet Forms, DocBox, Task Manager, Instanet Fax, Contacts, Partners, and your setup button. And of course, if you have help desk down here, you can click on that and get some help. If you notice, I have transactions, and then I have forms, and I have documents and Authentisign. If I scroll down the page, that's all I have here. Yours may look a little different. In order to change the way your main agent dashboard looks, come over here to the right corner where it says unlock the dashboard, and you click on that. These different icons appear up here. Anything in green is going to be something where you can do an action. Anything in blue just kind of stores stuff. So right now, this forms is the same as this forms right here. This screen is also customizable. As you can see, I just put the forms back up there. So if I wanted forms down here so I can have quick access to it all the time, I just click on it. And drag it down here and release it, and it'll drop it in here on my main screen. It's a little bit smaller, but I want it ahead of my document, so you just click on it, move it up. And then you have the ability to customize these a little bit, make them as big or as small as you want. So that's just kind of quickly how you customize your main agent dashboard to get it to look how you want. There's a good feature in here that allows you to do checklists and some other stuff. If you don't have, if you're looking to keep track of some of your transactions and stuff and are looking for a way to do that, Transaction Desk offers you that option. Once you're all set, just click right here and it'll lock it up in these won't change. When you're on your main agent dashboard and you're looking at any of these boxes that you have set up here, they will always be what the latest one you worked on will always be at the top. So my last transaction was this test transaction here. It was at the top. Same thing with the forms. The last form that I worked on will be up here at the top. When you get into the individual transactions, it's the same way, and I'll show you how you can set them up so that when you go to forms, they stay in the order that you like them in, so they're easy to find. So this is basically your main agent dashboard for Transaction Desk. The part we're going to be working into today is Instanet, which is over here where it says Transaction Desk. So we're going to click on the house, and it takes you to your transaction desk. Here's where all your transactions are that you have. They keep track of them. Pretty simple. Just over here where the big blue circle is, you can select and deselect it if you want to work on that one, or you can just double click on the name here and it'll bring up that whole transaction. These three little buttons over here on the right are dots. If you click on those, gives you a drop down dashboard for that transaction. If you wanted to open up multiple transactions at a time, all you do is just clicking on them, and these blue circles are turned to green check. And as you can see up here, your basket will show numbers, and you can either change their status or you can delete them altogether by that, if you wanted to delete multiple ones of them. This button right here tells you how you want it to look, either a grid or a list. That's the grid, and I keep mine in the list. This filter right here, this thing that looks like a funnel, you'll see it throughout, Transaction Desk and in Athenasign. This allows you, right now it's showing all my transactions. As we go through the transaction, there's a place to change the status of the transaction from active to pending to closed, whatever. If you are diligent in using that, then it's much easier to change the filter and only find those that are per that certain status. Majority agents don't use that filter. They just kind of leave it how they set up. So you don't need to come in and filter your searches. Okay. And this arrow right here sorts them from newest to oldest or oldest to newest. So right now we're in Transaction Desk, and we're going to say that we're going from the we want to be a new listing. We just got a call. Someone wants us to come out for a listing appointment. We're reasonably confident that we're going to land the listing, and we want to take as many of the forms or documents with us that we can to have them sign while we're there, or we've just came back from a listing appointment and we want to set up all the documents so we can send them to them for electronically. But either way, we're going to start with doing on the listing side first. The first thing that I always do when I go to a listing is I always open up BS&A. Which is the tax search. You can either do it through MiRealSource here by coming into tax and going over to BS&A online right here, or you can open it up. I have it saved in my browser, and you open it up. Most of the time, if it's a Macomb County property, MiRealSource should cover those for some of the municipalities that charge you a $2 fee. So I am just going to go into here. We'll find a property. The one I use is we'll open up BS&A online. The reason you want to always check the tax documents before you get there is you want to make sure that the people that called you to set up the appointment are going to be there to sign the documents. There are times when one person calls you, maybe it's a trust situation, and there's another family member that's on the deed, but they don't want them there to sign, or it's a husband and wife divorcing, or it's two people that own a property, whatever the reason is. Who's ever on the deed needs to be there to sign it. if you see that it's in the name of a corporation or some other entity like that, an LLC, you need to get from the articles of the incorporation who's the authorized person to sign for it. I had a case where I had a husband and wife owned rental properties as an LLC. They said they both needed to sign it. I asked to see their articles of incorporation. They sent them to me, and in their articles of incorporation, they clearly stated that only one party was responsible for signing it. So I had to make sure that it matched any documents that I was going to prepare. We're going to match whoever it is that needs to be signed. The property I'm going to search is in Macomb County. You should know how to go into BSNA. I can show you different at another time. That's another class. And the address I'm going to search for, that is actually in Macomb County right here. That is it's my parents' address, so we'll use this one. Came up and I'm going to click on it. What is going on with BSNA today? I know what the problem is. Sorry, I want to go through Shelby Township, not Macomb County. That's where the home is. Shelby in Macomb County. Same thing. And when I search on it, their name's going to come up. And we'll see all the information regarding that property. As I can see right now, there's a Nickson, George, and M on as the owner. That tells me there should be two people there at that when I go to that listing appointment. In this case, I happen to know the M stands for Marie, which is my mom. But let's say I get a call from George that says, "Hey, I'm thinking of listing my home. I'd like to have you come out and talk." I run this thing and I would call him back and say, "Hey, George, I noticed on the title that there's an and M. Who is the M?" "Oh, that's Marie. That's my wife. She's not going to be here today. Don't worry about it. She's out of town." "Well, George, I really need her to be there because she's going to have to sign off on everything that we do." And I've had people say, "No, we don't need her to sign everything. It's okay. I can sign it myself." Well, you're going to probably waste your time if they're going to be insistent on that. So anyways, we start with BSNA to find that information to see who's on the title, just to make sure before we go out to the listing appointment. I usually print this out because from here is where you're going to find information that's needed to auto-populate the MiRealSource data sheet for residential listing. You're going to want to see here, it tells that it's principal resident exemption. It's 100%. It tells you what the tax information is because they want to know what the SEV and everything else is. You can find all that here, the year built, tax information. Everything comes from BSNA. And so I usually print this sheet out or at least save it on my file. I certainly take it with me on that listing appointment. Especially when they start telling me how big their house is, and I'm saying, well, public record data has your house at 1,500 square feet, just under 1,600 square feet. And maybe they put on an addition that wasn't reported to the county and everything else, or the city. I also take a look at the building department just to make sure that there are no outstanding permits that haven't been closed. I've had cases where people have had work done and somebody just didn't close the permit out, which could be an issue later on. So that's just a quick side note of going to BSNA before you go out to your transaction. So now we're here and we want to set up the listing so we can get as much information pre-prepared when we go to that listing appointment, in case after we give them our listing presentation, they say, "Hey, Chris, you're great. Let's list the house." You have all that documentation there. You don't want to give them "I'll get back to you in a couple hours." They may change their mind. So to start a new listing, you come over here on transaction desk where it says add, click the add, and let the wizard take you through it. It's a 5-step process that's pretty simple. You name it. I usually name it, the person's last name. In this case, I'm going to call it test, and then the address. The beautiful thing about this is you can name it however you want to for you to be able to remember it. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. It's whatever works best in your mind so that when you look at them, you know what property it is or what you're doing. The template part, you click on the template. There are different templates. Your screen is going to look different based on what your broker has loaded in here for you. We're talking a Real Living Key today, so whatever they have loaded in there for your templates, some brokers load in every single document, some brokers only add in for listings, and some only add in for purchasing. So find the right set of documents that work for you. In this case, I'm doing a residential or condo listing. So I'm going to click on that. That will automatically pull in all the forms we have. The data, to get all the data so that you don't have to type it in, you want to click here where it says select source. And because we don't know, in order to pull that BS&A information in, we come down here to where it says real list MiRealSource. Select that. Then you have to, at a minimum, select the county. We know it's in Macomb. You can just start typing and Macomb should come up. There it is. We click on Macomb. You don't know the tax ID, but you have this magnifying glass right here. If you click on where it says tax search, you see Macomb's already up. All you typically need is the street number and then the address, the street name. Don't put in court, street, lane, or anything else. Just leave it like that. You may need the city sometimes or the zip code. Most oftentimes you don't. Once you have that little bit of information in, scroll down to the bottom where it says search tax data and click on that. Right here is the property. You have this blue circle here. Click on it to select it. Then you have to come up here and click select. It's already pulled up that information. As you can see, the tax ID is there. And you have different options of what you're going to be. In this case, I am the listing agent, and we're going to use the wizard, and you hit create. At this point, Transaction Desk is going to create a new listing transaction for me using all that information. Ignore the big orange sign up here. We're good. So right here, we're going to walk through the wizard. There are 5 steps. The first one is details. These same 5 steps are over here, so later on you can come back and update them as needed, but it's much quicker going this way. On the details page, or going through the wizard rather. On the detail page, it says residential listing. The address, property type, you can come in and change this. It doesn't all auto-populate. There's no MLS number yet because you haven't gotten the listing. You can come back in later and fill that in. But you see it pulled in the year built, the school district, just the zip code, all this other stuff. The reason I also print out the BS&A information is I do want to look at this to make sure the two match up. It's supposed to auto-populate it, but I still like to double check. If you know the listing price, you can put it in, or any of this information you can. I typically leave it blank because later on, if you add let's say we put in the listing price here and then we actually change it, but don't change it on this screen. Later on, if you put in a form that auto-populates the listing price, it'll pull what's here, not what you changed it for. So you can fill in as much or as little of this as you want to. Once you make sure this upper part information is correct. Oh, by the way, when I talked about transaction status, it's right here. This one says open. I can change it to active, closed, or any of these other ones. We're going to leave it at open right now. Click on next. It brings up the transaction dates. If you know these dates, you can fill them in now. If not, just leave them blank. At any time, if all of a sudden you had to leave a phone call or run the meeting, hit save and exit, it'll save the transaction at that point in the middle of the wizard. You hit next here. Here it shows me as a listing agent, my broker as a listing broker. the seller is George Nickson, and it also showed that I had another seller there. In this case, I know it's Marie, so I'm going to come in. These three buttons over here always indicate the menu. Click on that. I have the option to edit her or delete her, so I'm going to edit it. Her first name is Marie, and she doesn't have a middle name. And then Nickson. You have to have an email address. They all have to have an email address. Now, in order for them to receive stuff in Authentisign, two people are allowed to share the same email address. And when we get into Authentisign, even though they share the same email address, they will end up, George would get his own email, and then Marie would get her own email to sign. But if you want them to get documents to be signed, they have to have an email address. As you can see, it pulled in that her legal name was M. Nickson. That's not her legal name. I happen to know her legal name is Marie S. Nickson, even though that she doesn't have a middle name, she uses the S as part of it. So that would also be her preferred signature. And her preferred initials would be MSN. Okay. If she was new, I would add her to my address book, and she would stay in my contacts as a contact. That's on the Authentisign part. You could come in, obviously, and fill in the property if you wanted to. In this case, it's already it's pulling in the listing address. She has the same as the property address, so I could just click this box and it would save it. I'm also going to check George because, I just got the phone call, and during my phone call with him, said, by the way, George, I need to send you some information. What is your email address? So I have that. He gave me that as well. So before I go to the listing appointment, I'm at least going to have this information filled out. As you notice, I'm using both email addresses are the same for both George and Marie. Preferred signature, because his legal name is like that, I don't need to put in anything in preferred signature or preferred initials. It'll just take what's in here for the legal name. This comes in handy. I had a client who had a very unique first, middle, and last name, and he actually went by a shortened middle name. So under contact for first name and last name, I used what I knew him as is, Bob, instead of whatever his real name was. That appeared under legal name and preferred signature. So I'm going to save George. If I had to add in an attorney or somebody else like that at this point, if it were an estate and their attorney needed to be part of the documents, you could add in any contact you want to by coming up here to in the right where it says add, and you click on that, and you can add an existing contact, or you could add a contact from Google, or create a new transaction contact. So I'm going to create a new transaction contact. Here are your options. So this could be, for instance, a seller lawyer, and then it would put Tom the lawyer. You get the point here. Same thing with an email address and everything else like that. We could add them in if we wanted to. Yes, we'll leave that go there. I'm putting and that's that. That's how you would add another contact. Sorry for stumbling there. So we got myself as a listing agent, the listing broker. The two parties who are buying it are going to list it rather. We click next. It'll bring up all the forms. These are the forms that were preloaded in my company when I selected the template. They all came in here. As we can see, I already know some of them I don't need for this for whatever reason. let's say you had a condominium document in here because it's how your company loaded stuff. I would get rid of that. I know right now, language for sellers, lead paint. This is the one that says the house was built after 1978. I don't need that. So any forms you don't need, you just click over here on the menu and you can delete it. And what that does is when it says, are you sure you wish to delete this form? Yes, it's deleting it from the transaction, not out of your your template. Let's say you also know, as you see here, I don't have any sprinkler system or swimming pools. We're not going to worry about that because I'm on the listing side. But in today's world, we need to make sure that we have the photograph copyright thing, because I'm going to be getting photos from the seller, and I want to make sure they sign over the rights. So MiRealSource has a great form on that. So I can either come in and search these different areas, which kind of is really long, but if you knew what you were going to be searching for, you could just type in photo, oops, spell it correctly, and it'll pop up, and you can see who the form is from. My company does have one, but for this purposes, I want to show you how to add one. Photocopy right assignment to the agent or to the broker. We're going to grab the broker one and the agent one. Again, just clicking on them makes them that you want them, and you can either click on the basket or just click add. By clicking add, that brings them both into my transaction right here. Those are right there. We're in step 4. I got all the forms kind of how I want, and now we're going to go to next. And step 5 is documents. This is the fax backs cover sheet is always in there. If there were other documents that you wanted to add at this time as part of the transaction, let's say you had some condominium docs or whatever, you would just click up here and click add. Grab a file. Here was I was selling a commercial property, but I'm gonna use it anyways. And if you needed to add a document, all you do is open that document, click, and then drag it right there and drop it, and it uploads it. And that file is it was a commercial property. They were looking at making a medical marijuana facility, so I added that here for people to see on the commercial property. So that's how you could bring in any document that you wanted to make part of your transaction. You click done, and now that transaction is set up. You can work on the individual forms from this box if you wanted to. The issue becomes when you work out of this box. I'm in the transaction and I'm in the forms box. Every time I work on a form, the newest one will go up to the top. So it gets confusing to find your forms. So you can either click down here where it says go to forms, or you can click over here where it says forms. Either way, it takes you to the forms on that transaction. Once here, you can rename the forms if you wanted to for whatever reason. You can just come in and click this. I got to scroll down because it showed up right here. You hit properties rename, and I just want to call this the lead-based paint disclosure. I didn't like that big long line, long name in there, so you can rename the form wherever you want. Where that becomes really nice is most companies, when you pull down an addendum, it just says amendment or addendum, and now you can name it addendum 1, whatever it was, addendum 2, whatever it was, so that later on it's easier to find them and you're not trying to find what date you sent it and everything else. So we renamed the form just to say simply lead-based paint disclosure. And you can also move the order in which they're in so that Certain agents like all their forms to be in a printed out in a certain way, and it's easier in your mind to find stuff. So if you ever want to move a form, all you have to do is click here, where my cursor became a cross or finger, and then see how I just drag them up into whatever order I want. And then you can change the order that the forms will appear. That's when you're in this forms tab, that's how they'll always appear every time you open it up, so you don't have to always try to remember going to finding the forms based on the order they're in. I know I'm not going to give them the seller's net sheet. I don't want that. Well, I'm not going to use the seller's disclosure addendum. These are all forms that my broker had loaded in there. I know this one isn't exempt from the Seller's Disclosure Act, so I don't need that. I'm not going to use the estimated net proceeds to the seller. I'm going to use the other photo copyright one. So I'm just showing you how to get rid of stuff that you don't want. So there you go. I picked several things, several documents forms I don't want. So I come up here to my basket, and if I just clicked on delete, it'll take them again, only remove them from my transaction. It won't remove them from the list of anything. I loaded both the copyright assignment to the agent and to the broker. I opened it up real quick to see what it says. So I realized I don't need the one to the agent. I'm going to just use the broker one. You can either select it here and go up to the basket, or click on the menu, and it gives you the opportunity to delete it right here, and you can delete the individual form like that. So I got my forms in order the way I want them. I have everything all set up. I like the way this is looking. So now I'm going to start going through my forms and getting them ready. The first thing we're going to do, I'm not going through every form here. The one form I'm going to show you is the seller's disclosure statement. Whether it comes, this one happens to be from my brokerage, but there's all the seller's disclosure statement are the same unless your logo's on it, because that is a state form. So and why am I not coming up with it? And you should have that on there. The beauty about this form, I'm going to open it up on the seller's disclosure statement. They all read the same. And I do want to caution you agents out there, please understand this last sentence right here. It's very important. And this is why we push so hard, or you should be pushing on the listing side to get this, and more importantly on the buyer side to get a completed seller's disclosure statement. Failure to provide a purchaser with a signed disclosure statement will enable a purchaser to terminate an otherwise binding purchase agreement. What that means to you as a listing agent, if you give them an incomplete seller's disclosure statement or give the wrong reason why you feel it's exempt, and it's not truly exempt, that buyer can release all the contingencies. They can release the inspection contingency, and they can release the financial contingency. You can have a clear to close, and you can be sitting at the closing table. And all of a sudden the buyer goes, I never got a seller's disclosure statement from you, and you owe me one. I'm walking out of the transaction. They could be entitled to a full refund of their earnest money deposit, because it's the seller's responsibility to provide this to the buyer, and that's a Michigan law. So just Michigan real estate laws. Just make sure you understand that, and you get this filled out. Your sellers fill it out to the best of their ability, and that's on file.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris. I do have a question from Eric Ramo. He
Yep.
asks, how do I see the date modified on the doc list?
The date the form was modified. Eric, I'm going to get to that. It's a good question. I'll get to it as soon as I finish with this seller's disclosure statement. The thing with the seller's disclosure statement, this is one of those forms where if you come up here once it's open to file and you come down here to send email, we're going to email it. We're going to open up the seller's disclosure statement and hit OK. The recipient's name, you would fill them in. It would be George and Marie and them. Type in a little message what it is. But here's what I want to show you. You can send it as a link. And if you send it as a link, they'll get this exact form that's behind here. And if I click allow editing of the form, that means they can bring it up online and fill in all the little boxes, checks, and squares, and actually type in the boxes where they need to. If you're doing a completely electronic transaction, and they can fill it out. If you send it as an attachment, they have to print it out, fill it out with a pen, and then sign it and send it back to you. When you send it as a link and then you allow them to edit the form, they're going to have to send it back to you in order for it to go out through Authentisign. It's not a one-step process, it's a two-step process. You can put an expiration date on here, which is required, which means if they don't fill it out by a certain date, it's no longer going to be available to be open. You can also do the same thing with the lead-based paint if you need to, but mostly we use this on this form, and it would be emailed to the parties. They can open it up, and then they can just do this as they go through, just like I'm being able to do here. They would have the ability, if you sent it as a link, they would type in this box here, is there any evidence of water? If they typed yes, and then say had whatever they put in there 10 years ago. So then when they're all done, they would save that and it would be sent back to you. So this form, again, it's real important in today's, especially in today where we're not supposed to be at homes. In order to send it for them to fill out so that they don't have to print it out, you come down here to where it says this box with the arrow is for emailing. You hit email. You select the form, just the seller's disclosure. You hit OK, and then you have the ability to send it as a link, and you got to click allow editing of forms. That allows them to fill them out. And once you fill in this information here, the recipient's name and email, they'll get an email address and you'll send it to them. In this case, you can send it to just one. You don't have to send it to George and Marie or two parties. Just somebody there that lives there has to fill this out and give this back to you. So that's that. How to send that form electronically. And the question, Eric, that you asked, how do I see the date modified on the document list? It shows up right here. If you remember, I loaded these all up. If you look, modified 4/13/20 at 11/19, that's when I loaded them all. But remember, I just went into lead-based paints disclosure and changed the name of it at 11/31. And here there's a seller's disclosure. I just went to change it at 11/40. These are on your forms. On the document side, close. It doesn't, when the documents don't show you when they were loaded in there, because documents, once they come in, you can't change them. Forms, the difference between a document and a form is an editable form that you can go in and make corrections and changes to. They have fields that we can fill out and stuff like that, so you have the ability to modify them. Documents are just that. They're PDFs that when they come to you, you can't change them. That's just how they are. So all you'll see is the date that you received it. No. So that's the difference between documents and forms. So there won't be necessarily a date modified on here. It'll show when it comes back from a signing, if you sent it out to signing, that the date that form was, that became a document and was signed. I see it answered your question. All right, thank you. So we're back in the forms part. I'm going to go to our exclusive right to sell listing agreement. You go through and just, it's pretty simple. Make sure this information is correct, especially down here. And where the address is, that's why you print out your BSNA, and you want to make sure that all this matches, make sure it auto-populates correctly. If there was stuff that was going to be included, if you knew that already, you would add it in here. Please just don't say all appliances. I would list them. It's always better to list them on the listing agreement. If during your walkthrough you see a refrigerator or freezer in the garage or the basement, and say, hey, when you say all appliances, does it also include this freezer or this refrigerator in the garage? They may say, oh no, I want to take that one with me. So in that case, you're going to exclude it. I also had the case where somebody had a bar and they had a cooler, a glass cooler behind the bar. It was really nice. And so when I said appliances, I listed them and I specifically excluded that one because they wanted to take it with them. So, and it was an appliance, but they were taking it with them. I got a purchase agreement that said all appliances. Well, I made sure on that purchase agreement, I went back and said it does not include the one behind the bar. So anyways, just make sure you list here what's included. If you see very nice drapes or curtains hanging, ask them if those are staying with the home, because those are considered part of the home. And you don't want to have that argument later on right before closing and the person's taking all their drapes with them. Any blinds are considered built-in or shades, but some of the valances and stuff that are not there, it's a gray area as to whether or not it's included. So I always ask to be sure. And if they say the valances and the big drapery are not, they want to take them with them for whatever reason, then I make sure to exclude them. Go through and just click where you need to click and do everything that you need to do in your form. And when you're all done with everything, you don't need to save it as you go through. You can just X out and it takes you right back to forms to keep working on them. And go through your forms and fill them out as you need to. Once those forms are all filled out, you can print them to take them with you. In mass, all you have to do is select them all, come up here and go to print, and you could print all those forms so that you could take them with you to your listing appointment and have them signed. Also on here, the MiRealSource data sheet right here. You want to get as much as this filled out before you get to a listing appointment, so that your sale, residential, all this information you can get filled out before, as much as you can before you get there. School district is real important because that determines taxes. If you don't know, back on the BSNA sheet when we printed it out, it said Utica Community Schools, so I'm going to put in Utica there and add that. The mail city is where you get your mail. The municipality is the municipality where you pay your taxes. Most of the time they're the same, but in some instances they're not. So you want to make sure you have those filled in. Just get as much as this filled in as you can. And if you know some of these other features, fill that in. The SEV, summer taxes, all this stuff, you should have that filled out because it's all on your BSNA before you get there. If in a normal situation, when I go on a normal listing appointment, right now we're waiving the requirements to have the rooms measured on listings during this current COVID-19 crisis. However, I would take this form with me on a listing appointment, and I would use this opportunity while I'm having them fill out the seller's disclosure while I'm there to go through and measure the rooms, ask for the level, the length, the width, and the floor covering. And I do all that while they're filling out the seller's disclosure. It gives them an opportunity to do that, and for me to go and snap a few photos if I'm going to take the photos myself, or at least a couple photos until the photographer can get there, and get this room filled out. And then I fill out as much of this information as I can all the way through here, including public remarks and agent-only remarks. For public remarks, I like to ask my clients what they like about their home, and then I kind of use their features to make my public remark statements there. So a lot of this information up here in the beginning is auto-populated because we pulled it in through the tax search. One other thing I want to touch on briefly is when you're in a form like this that has a large text field, like agent only remarks, you can pre-add Eric, I see a question there regarding documents. I'll show you documents later on. That's documents are easier to understand when we go through the signing portion. That's when you start getting all those different documents in there. Okay, so we'll get into that on next time when we go into Thenasign. But right now I want to show you in a text field like this where it's a multiple text field, you can add a clause. You can create clauses. I have some personal clauses, and right here is my agent only remarks. I click on that, hit OK. As you can see, here's what I put in there. I can change it a little bit if I need to, but I don't have to type in every time all this stuff, the same, no virtual tours. Well, I got to eliminate that now. Show an agent to be physically present. Again, I would have to change all that. I need to create a new clause for COVID-19, but and everything else that I want to be in there, I can, even though it was a clause I dropped in, I can edit parts of it if I want to, or add to it. But it saves me from having to type that all the time. And to create a clause, well, I'll get to that at the very end. We got a little bit more, we'll wrap that up. But that's this form I also take with me, and I use this to fill all this out. The reason you fill out as much of this as you can is because when you come back, you can save this form and create a partial listing for yourself on the MLS until you have all the documents to make it go active. And by having the information on this form, and if you come up here to upload listing, it won't allow me to do it because I don't have enough information on there right now. It's going to tell me that it would save it under your listings as a partial, which would be great. I have to come in and refill out all the stuff it's asking for. Otherwise, so you can take this and create a partial listing. You don't have to go to the MLS, open up listings, create a new listing, and go all the way through. It'll just take this information directly from this form. So we're going to exit out of this form. That's on the listing side. That's how you go through on the listing side. Another way to use Transaction Desk, which it's very, very similar, but we pulled up a property before we got here from it's one of Christie's, who's out of your Real Living Key office, and so it's her listing. Let's say we did a tour of it and we really liked it. And Christy, I want to say it's very nice. You have the different tours on here, which is really good. You have the virtual tours for people to look at and go through. This nice job. It's a nice looking listing, and everything else like that. So well done. Here's your single property. Just to let you know real quick, when you're looking at a listing, all these little quick action links right here. This is what they call a single property website. So it's unique to each property that we all have. and it's only branded back to the listing agent. But the nice thing is, if Christy didn't know how, she could come here and share this on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, email it, LinkedIn, and some other features. Give some quick detail about the home. This is automatically generated for you through MiRealSource and List Track, and you have some other information all on here. That's the single property website that you can do, quickly share it out there on social media and everything. Back to here. My buyer looked at this home and liked it, and now I want to write an offer. So you come right here to the fan deck that looks like cards, and if you hover there, it'll say Instanet. Click on that. It takes me back to the main dashboard, and this time it's going to be create a transaction. Again, I like to change the name to the last name and then the address. The template, this time I'm going to use our residential sale or purchase template. And you see the screen already changed and imported all the data. It has me as the selling agent. And now we're going to create the transaction. I'm going to go through the same 5-step process. As soon as it loads up here. I got some old forms in there. That's why I keep getting this notice here. Now, as you can see, it's a residential sale, has the address, all the same stuff off of BSNA. It has the comments show up here and everything else like that. That's the details of it. You go to the next, it has the transaction dates. I'm not quite sure when I'm going to do anything, so I'm going to leave the dates blank. You can fill them in or you don't have to. Right here, the contacts. As you see, it has me as the selling agent and the selling broker, but it also pulled up Christy's information. So now I don't have to fill any of that in. It has her broker information in here. This is where I'm going to add my buyer on here because they're one of the contacts. So I'm going to come in. I'm going to create a new transaction contact. They are going to be a buyer. And the first name is Betty, and the last name is Buyer. And I'm going to put in the email for her. And I could put in the legal name or not. Otherwise, it'll just take what's up here as Betty Buyer for her legal name, preferred signature, and all that. I could add her to the address book. And you could put in their information on the address side if you wanted to. It's not required. And I'm going to hit save. And I have Betty Buyer in there as my client now, so that I can put their name where they need to be on the documents. I click next. Here are all the forms that come up. It's the same process as on the other side. You can weed out which ones you want. Add more if you need to. We're going to click next right here. Documents. As you can see, because this was a MiRealSource listing, it already pulled in the lead paint disclosure and the seller's disclosure that Christy had loaded up. So I have these documents. And to your question, Eric, here you can see is when they were modified. It showed when they were created and when they were modified right here. And if I wanted to see the seller's disclosure, I could click here. And there it was. For some reason, oh, it's an estate. Okay. And the lead-based paint disclosure. There you go. So those are there. Just for information purposes only, those items should also be here under the D on the quick action links. So before you go on the listing, you can pull both these up and take them out there if you wanted to. Back to our transaction. We're in step 5 of 5. Here were the documents in there. We're going to click done. And now it takes me to the transaction where I'm going to create the purchase agreement. Again, I don't work out of these boxes because they always put the latest form on top. I'm going to just come over here to forms and open that up. And here are all my forms. Same as before. I know we're not going FHA, so I can delete that. Yes. There's no pool inspection, deleting that. It is in Macomb County, and it does have a septic, so we're going to have that in there for those of you who work in Macomb County. If there is a septic, Macomb County does require the health department to sign off on it. So if you're a listing agent and it's a septic field, make sure that's taken care of before you get into listing, or if you're on the buyer side, be aware of that. Anyways, you would change the forms just like we did on the other side, or rename them. One of the things I want to bring up to you, reason why we check everything, our purchase agreement has a little glitch in it when they load it. And as you can see right now, in this very first sentence, it says, the property located in the blank of blank county of Macomb. It doesn't have, what should be in there is township, in the township of Shelby, county of Macomb. So that's why you still check this form, even though it auto-populates everything. And then again, it's the same thing. Go in and fill out your forms like you're supposed to. Save them at the end. You can either click save on the way down if you want to, or you can just click the X and go to the next form. The other thing that takes the two processes, whether you're on the buyer side or the listing side, are the same once you get into forms and documents. The big difference is when you're on the buyer side, you can get directly to that property just by clicking on this button right here that says Instanet and start your transaction from that side. If you're on the listing side, you want to go into transaction desk, create the listing by going in and doing the property. When you get to this property search part, and it'll bring in all the other information for you. Those are the two different ways between listing and buying side. However, once you're in the forms and your screens and all that, it all looks the same. So, Eric, I see your question was answered, so we're good on that. This button right here, your settings. I'm sorry, I went to it quickly. It's way down here on the bottom. It looks like gears. It has your preferences. Check your user information and everything else in that. Make sure things are the correct. If you change your phone number or anything like that, you wanna make sure you're good on it. That's the user information. Your office information, again, make sure that's all correct. Your email signature, if you wanted to put a signature in there, you'll create an email signature. Mine's deleted for some reason. Branding, if you had photos, you would add photos in here. And mine all got deleted. Oh, I know why. And then your login credentials are here. That's under preferences. If you wanted to add clauses, you would come down to this one that says clauses. So you click on your gear and go to clauses. Some offices have office clauses or system clauses. To create a clause, clauses, you should, I'm missing something here. Well, we're going to add a personal clause. We just click add. You can either add a new so what you would start under, let me do that again for you so I don't confuse you. You would start under system clauses or office clauses. You won't have personal clauses because that folder won't be created. So you go to office clauses, won't let you add any. How did I get there? Personal clauses. We're going to add. We can add different folders or a clause. To add a new clause, you just click on Add a New Clause. You name it, and you put in what you want it to say. And it's that simple to create clauses. And you have them. I have my agent-only remarks. I have some stuff I add to an addendum when a buyer declines a home warranty clause. I use that when I'm working with investors and they decline the home warranty. And same when the buyer waives an inspection clause. When my buyer waives my inspections, there's a clause I add in the PA that kind of protects everybody involved and make sure my buyer's aware that he did waive his inspection. There's all kinds of different clauses you can create and have there that you can drop in. That's how you create clauses real quick. Again, they're under the gearbox here and you come up to clauses. The other thing you can do is you can come in and you can create your own transaction templates. Let's say your broker puts all the forms in one template and you want to make them separate for condo listing, condo sell, residential listing, residential sell. All you do is come into transaction templates, come up here and click add, create a transaction template. This is a test residential. The type, you want to declare if it's for a residential listing or sale, because that will also, on some of them that you pull in, tell them where to auto-populate whose name gets filled in for the buyer or seller. This is for a sale, and you can put in a description if you wanted to. You hit save, and now we're going to update. And in here, for the test residential, you have your checklist, your contacts. If you knew you were always going to be the agent, you could put it in there under contacts, create your own, put yourself in as the contact. You don't have to. The biggest thing is you come here to forms, and this is where you add all the forms that you want in your own template, however you want. So I'm a Coldwell banker agent. Yours will say Real Living Key. I can just go in and pull in those forms and create my own, and I'm just selecting at random here so you can see, to create my own template with just the forms I want to use in there. I want to add those forms. I also have some MiRealSource forms. I can either type the quick search bar or come down here to MiRealSource forms and grab a couple of those forms that I want to put in there. I would actually get the one for the residential condo, not that one, and add those. I've now created my template with the forms in there that I want. So we're good. And here are all the forms. And you would just hit, if you were on a team, you could also share them and all that. I would just click update. Now, next time I go to do a sale, I could pull up my own individual template. That's how you create that. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I think the class was from 11 to 12, was it not? And we're about 5 minutes over. So does anybody have any questions on the transaction side of Instanet? We're going to go over Authentisign next week, and I'll show you how to take these forms and get them all to be signed and everything else.
We're looking good so far, Chris. I'm not seeing any questions come in. You must be very thorough in what you're doing.
I think everybody ate too much Easter candy yesterday, and they're so again, transaction desk under resources has two sides, Instanet forms and Authentisign. Instanet forms is where you go to create the forms to be used for Authentisign, and they are two different things. If you're doing a list, if you're doing an offer, you can start right from you know, the MLS sheet here, listing ticket, And if you're doing a listing, always go to BS&A first and check out the property information or realist tax information. And the biggest thing on a listing is make sure you have the correct parties there when you go to sign. The last thing you want to do is sit down with somebody, have everything signed, and then all of a sudden you start your title work and they say, hey, there's somebody else on that title. I did have a case where I got called for an estate. They wanted me to handle the transaction. I looked it up and I said, there's one other name on that. It turned out it was their sister. The mother had the home in her trust. The one daughter was the executor of the trust, but the title was also in the sister's name, the other sister's name. The sister in charge of the trust, because mom had become incapacitated, didn't want to deal with her sister and wanted me to list her home. I tried to explain it to her that the other sister had to be there, and she said, absolutely not. I want her to have nothing to do with this. Well, unfortunately, because both names were on there, they both had to be there. I told her good luck in finding another real estate agent, and so I didn't do it. So that's why you want to check. Had I gone there not knowing that and had everything, the sister was responsible for the executor of the trust sign everything, we wouldn't have had a legal listing agreement. And so therefore any offers that came in, she didn't have the legal right to sell. Anyways, that's it. If you got any questions, shoot them to us. Robin, thank you for the nice comment. I appreciate it. Eric, yeah, we'll look into the dates on everything. It should be showing up in your forms. We'll look into Thenasign when the documents come in, might be a little better. Anything else?
And if you guys need your transaction templates updated, remember the ones for the office is controlled by either the office manager or the broker, just depending on who's who. So like I just fixed Chris's today. He had one, the little flag that come up. There was an old form that was still stuck in there. Problem is the people who do the templates don't always do the work in the forms. So that's when staff at MiRealSource can hop in and take care of those little things, just, you know, updating a form. It makes a big difference on the back end.
It does. And so, especially in today's world, this is a great way to know how to go through all these forms, and especially the MiRealSource information sheet. You can load it up there as a partial listing, which makes it really easy for you to use that form instead of writing it all down by hand. Even when I get back from my clients, after I've written it all down, I come in, I open up Transaction Desk, and I load up as much of that as I can, and then create my temporary listing from there. Anything else? If that's not it, we're going to end the webinar, and everybody have a great day.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, everybody, for attending.